Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report. This is the space. We bring you Black America's headline news, views, and opinions. I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi.
Happy Monday. I'm Nielle, and Brooke is out today.
Exactly. A great show planned for you guys today. And on today's report, Pastor K.W. Tulloss is here to discuss the impact COVID-19 is having on the Black church. And we'll continue our conversation on the church's role in today's social justice fight.
And Dr. Wes Bellamy is here to talk about impact of the Unite the Right trial verdict and Confederate statues coming down. Plus, we have your COVID-19 updates.
Plus, we have your HBCU headlines, and Art Basel remembers Breonna Taylor. We have that and so much more. You know why, soulmates? Because it's our voice and it's our truth. So let's get to it.
Good evening, soulmates. More than 100 of the nation's most esteemed Black pastors, led by Reverend Al Sharpton and Reverend Calvin Butts III, gathered during the Choose Healthy Life Black Clergy Conclave to discuss the COVID-19 pandemic and the Black community. During the conclave, the pastors discussed the latest COVID-19 vaccine recommendations, boosters, and shots for children, the power of the Black church to address health disparities on a local level, and CHL's community-based approach to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. Additionally, the pastors were briefed on the CHL Action Plan, which provides COVID-19 education, testing, and vaccination through the Black church, a staple in the Black community for generations. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected Black Americans more than any other phase in terms of infections and deaths. Additionally, due to the skepticism Black Americans have for the U.S. medical community, vaccination rates were below those of other races, making the situation worse.
Joining us now to discuss the impact of COVID-19 and what its impact has been on the Black church, and we'll continue our conversation on the Black church's role in today's social justice fight. Soulmates, welcome President of the Baptist Ministers Conference of Los Angeles, Pastor K.W. Tulloss. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here today, Nielle.
Glad to
Thank
have
you. For having me.
Now, you know, a very serious topic. We see that COVID-19 is on the rise again. Talk to us about how the Black church has been dealing with COVID-19.
Well, I'm so happy that this topic is of discussion on today because I believe here, especially here in Los Angeles, the Black church has been at the forefront of pushing and making sure our congregants and our faith community as a whole has had access to these vaccines that we have been talking about. There's so much of our community has been disenfranchised, and we have health deserts. And many of our churches have stepped up, has opened up their doors, their parking lots, opened up their facilities to really spearhead many of our efforts across the country. And I'm thankful for the Black church because they shut down the church doors, but we was able to open up to really provide these services to our community, and many churches have done that.
Pastor Tulloss, we really applaud what you are doing, but what has been the impact on attendance?
Well, of course, I mean, we have all followed, many of our churches have followed the CDC guidelines, and of course, our churches have shut down, and we are at this process of trying to get back open. But ultimately, you know, it was all about us saving the lives of those who attend our churches every day. We had to be good stewards of what the scientists were saying. And at the end of the day, what we did as the Black church, we rallied together and we stayed the course and we followed the rules. And in us following the process, I believe that there was a greater blessing because we get to celebrate and love on the lives of those who God has given us the ability to pastor.
Pastor Tulloss, I want to switch it up a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about social justice. You work with the National Action Network under the leadership of Reverend Al Sharpton. And during the Ahmaud Arbery, Justice for Ahmaud Arbery trial, we have to be very, sensitive when we talk about the trial and not say it's the Ahmaud Arbery trial. We know that, so it's justice. But there was a call for pastors to pull up, show up, during the trial, and you were one of those pastors along with Pastor Lewis Logan. I saw Bishop Todd Irving there, and a lot of other pastors here from LA. Why was it so important for you guys to show up and represent with the coalition of black pastors from across the country?
Well, Neo, again, the things that we witnessed in Brunswick, Georgia was alarming. Much of the defense making a mockery of those who was there to support Ahmaud Arbery family, his mother, his father. And as we know, they, said, we don't want no more black pastors in the room. I don't know if it was because of ignorance or because, they didn't want us there to support this family who lost their loved one. And so when they made that statement, Reverend Sharpton and other leaders such as Reverend Jamal Bryan and others, we heard that call, and we wanted to show up and let them know that the black pastor and black church, black pastors are pillars of our community. We're there for all of our families, regardless of if it's in the light of what took place in Georgia, but we're there. As so many of us, we heard that call and we went beyond the walls, and we showed up to Brunswick, Georgia. We was expecting hundreds of pastors, and we got about 1,000 pastors from across the world, and I was able to go and represent from Los Angeles, and I'm thankful for all of the pastors who heard that call, and we are thankful. Not only did we hear the call, we prayed. We prayed for the family, we prayed for a great outcome, and this was a step in the right direction because of the outcome that took place in Brunswick. So this shows us the important role of the church, the important role of the pastor. Pastor is always at the forefront trying to advocate on behalf of the ones that God give them the lead.
Absolutely, and I'm so happy that as a pastor, you know that, because they have tried to remove black pastors, and we know that, and so I'm just happy that you know that we, the black community, need black pastors. And so I want to know your thoughts when one of the attorneys for the defendant said several times, we don't need all of these black pastors at the trial. How did that make you feel?
That was alarming. I mean, because again, like I said, the black pastor or the pastor of a church is the angel of the church. Mm-hmm. And for them to make it into the point of saying that you're not even allowed to be there to support and pray for families, that was a slap in the face to all clergy all across the world. That's why we heard this call. That's why we showed up in numbers. That's why we was there from the beginning to the end of the trial, praying and making sure we are there what pastors do. A pastor, again, the Bible talks about the pastor being the angel of the church. And so therefore, we can have all of these white supremacists in the courtroom, but we can't have a pastor there to support us. It was alarming. So I'm glad that the community, the faith community heard, and the faith community was able to go down to Georgia, and we had a great success in reference to what took place.
Absolutely. Okay, voting rights is a big issue for the black community. What is the black church role in helping combat voting laws and voter suppression?
One of the beautiful things that we was able to lead here in Los Angeles is our Soul to the Poll organization, making sure our community was, educated, engaged around many of the platforms and the many things that's taking place in our community. And so I believe the role of the church is very, very important because we have a platform every week, as you have a platform every day through your television show. We have a platform every week to really gear the hearts of our community, to helping them to understand the importance of voting, helping them to understand the importance of preserving our rights, not only voting, but preserving the rights. From demonstration, I demonstrate a lot. And so it's important that, again, we push and let individuals know we got to go from demonstration to legislation. So we have to preserve our legacy and the rights of those who have fought before us to make sure, again, that our community is receiving the just due. And a lot of that is found when we get to the polls. So our voting rights is very important because we all have that right to vote. We want to make sure we take advantage of it. And I believe the church should spearhead that effort, which we are doing here in Los Angeles.
I love that. I love that. Being a pastor is definitely more than just being a pastor. So that was very powerful. So when we look at COVID-19, criminal justice, voter suppression, and other issues that impact the black community, what would you say is the church's role in today's social justice fight?
I think the church's role is to continue to allow the church to be a beacon of light to the community. That's what the Bible talks about the church as being that light. And a lot of our lights have been dimmed over the period of times. Maybe it's because we've become comfortable. But when you named all of those issues, every one of those issues that's affecting our African American and Latino communities. And I believe it's our role as the church to continue to make sure our church doors are open and individuals understand that the church is that safe haven, that city of refuge where they can come and they can understand the importance of just their lives and their role in the community. I believe the church role is to continue to empower and inform and to uplift the community by helping the community be relevant in such a time like this. So when we talk about all of these things, from voting rights to COVID to just the many issues that we're facing, I believe the church is that light, and we have to continue to share that light. And it's important that we continue to upbuild and uplift our community as we're doing.
I love it. I'm so glad that you say we're going from demonstration to legislation. Mm-hmm. That is so important. Reverend Tulloss, we thank you so much for joining us here today on Fox Soul's Black Report, and we wish you a happy holiday.
Happy holidays.
All right,
thank you.
That was so powerful. I absolutely loved that interview. So we're going to talk about COVID-19 a little bit here. For the first time in 2 months, the U.S. is averaging more than 100,000 new COVID-19 cases each day. The update comes shortly after millions of Americans traveled for the Thanksgiving holiday, according to CNN. The 7-day moving average of new cases was 121,437 as of Saturday, according to data from Johns Hopkins University. Now, prior to this week, the U.S. topped the 100,000 cases a day mark in early October. Also on the rise is the number of COVID-19 deaths, with a 7-day average of 1,651 people dying from the virus each day as of Saturday, according to Johns Hopkins University data that we just provided to you. Now, average daily deaths have not been this high in more than a month. So the vast majority of new cases in the U.S. continue to be from the Delta variant, but the U.S. Health officials, they have detected the new Omicron coronavirus variant in at least 16 states. This is very scary. Now, what I will say, this is not to say that we should take it any lighter here, but the Omicron variant is showing to be slightly more milder than the Delta variant. Most people that do get infected with the Omicron don't need oxygen, and they're averaging a hospital stay a little bit less than 3 days. But Dr. Fauci is also still encouraging everyone to get a booster shot, and we here are, encouraging everyone to wear their mask and, of course, get vaccinated.
And I think that's what you really should do. You should be vaccinated. You should get the booster shot if you can get it now. Also, continue to wear that mask. Social distancing is so important, but I do know some things that are going on. A cruise ship returned to New Orleans with 17 coronavirus cases aboard. 17. And when you think about things like that, you think about the mayor in New York, what he wants to do right now, a sweeping vaccine mandate for all of the private employers, taking precaution to make sure we don't get those numbers like we used to. I feel like with it being wintertime, with the fall and winter season coming, the numbers were going to go up anyway, but now I feel like we are in a better space, so to speak, because people are getting vaccinated on a daily.
That's true.
Well, contrary to that, though, the numbers are rising like it was when we first started with the pandemic. But I am glad that the Black church is at the forefront of these things, because the only way we really are going to combat this thing, especially when we look at the Black community, because we're the ones that are most affected by this, is for the church to be that light on a hill. So if you are a church out there, there's an organization called Balm in Gilead, which specifically helps Black churches with things like COVID-19, HIV and AIDS. That's a great resource to pull from. And as we know, Reverend Al Sharpton is working with the CDC. So when we have things like that, when we look at our community to help combat it, these are really resources that we really need to pull on to help educate, to help get our communities and our neighbors and our family members vaccinated, because the only way we're going to curb this epidemic is really from our peer-to-peer. You know, we can do all types of things, but the only way we found most effective, especially in the Black community, community is a peer-to-peer type situation. So, you know, like I say, I'm cautiously optimistic, but these numbers terrify me at the rate that they're moving up.
I mean, because we talked about all of the presidents. Remember, you guys remember where the presidents all got vaccinated, and VP Kamala Harris, and that was supposed to make everyone want to get vaccinated. But I was like, that's not making, when we were,
we were still against it at that time.
Yeah. You know, we were previous anti-vaxxers. And so before then, I was like, that's not what makes me want to get vaccinated. It was my granddad getting vaccinated. It was my mom getting vaccinated, my best friends getting vaccinated. Neil, like you're saying, that peer-to-peer, that's what really made me want to go and get the shot.
Exactly. Yeah, even like my sister who had COVID-19, my mom got vaccinated. So you're so right. All right, soulmates, let's see what's happening in the political world. 2 more aides working in Vice President Harris' office are expected to leave their roles in the coming weeks, in addition to the 2 high-profile exits of her press secretary and communications director. A source familiar with the departures confirmed to The Hill. Peter Vels, who is the Vice President's Director of Press Operations, and Vince Evans, the Deputy Director of the Office of Public Engagement and Intergovernmental Affairs for Harris, are planning to leave those positions soon, the source confirmed. Harris' office declined to comment. The Washington Post first reported on their impending exits. Look, when people say they feel like it's a sinking ship and things like that, I think they're way out of bounds with it. This is not normal. We can admit that, right? Seeing this is very not normal. And I feel like, you know, they're having the first year going to the second year within the office, and they're trying to put things, they're making these transitions. They still have a lot of bills on the table they got to handle. This is not a good look for the Democratic Party and for the Biden party moving toward the midterms, because people on the outside, they're going to take some of these stories and be like, what, are they having problems internally we don't know about? I don't think that is the case. I mean, some things just don't work out, unfortunately, but I don't want to be the one to say that I'm truly alarmed by seeing all these exits.
Well, basically, she's having a communications department overhaul. I mean, for months, they've been saying that, you know, her messaging and she's had, you know, she hasn't had the best of headlines. So in order strategically to change that narrative, you have to do a communications department overhaul, from your communications director to your press secretary to your communications aides and everybody in that department. And that's really what is specifically focusing on. Now, what's hurting her is that communications and aides from her previous seats, like the Senate and when she was district attorney's office, they're saying that, you know, she doesn't read her briefings, and that, you know, she comes in, and then when things don't go her way, she blames the aide. Now, that is a bad narrative for her. But as far as her presentation in the first, you know, year of her sitting as VP, she has had bad headlines. And so if I was her, I would want a whole new department. And I would want to, you know, try, especially if you're looking at somebody that is supposed to be the next candidate for president. She definitely has to clean up, you know, this office, and she has to get some headlines out. Like Joe Biden put her over immigration. She needs to get some headlines pumping out about what she's doing with that. Black America needs her to step up for voting rights. Now, we know the vice president sits back and the president leads, but if she's strategically planning to run for president, she has to change her narrative immediately.
So much on this. Just really quick, important to note that both people, the 2 that are leaving, the 2 that you just mentioned, they're both going to get new jobs close or in the administration, which was kind of like, But also, you know, Simone Sanders, we talked about her leaving recently. And so a lot of people were wondering, like you said, this is 4 people now that are all leaving. Romeo, like you just said, Simone Sanders, she said to the Washington Post that her leaving had nothing to do with displeasure with working. Now, of course, this could be, you know, they're in communication, so that's what they do. They fix stuff. But she says that has nothing to do with displeasure working with VP Kamala Harris. She says she's getting married next year. She wants to plan a wedding. And so, you know, they're all trying to make it seem like, hey, this is no big deal. Yeah. But what's really important, the scary part that I feel like, is that you have 4 people who don't feel like they need VP Kamala Harris as their boss. They don't need that on their resume. That's like, it's an honor to work for the vice president. So for them to feel like they don't need that as their resume booster anymore, I feel like, Nia, like you said, something is really going on internally.
We'll see.
All right, frustration among Democrats and activists is growing over stagnating legislation on Capitol Hill meant to expand voting rights, an issue the party has said is a priority, but has been unable to clinch a victory in Congress. Now, the dissatisfaction is at a high as Democrats repeatedly try and fail to muscle two bills, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act, through a 50-50 Senate after both pieces of legislation passed through the narrowly divided House. Now, Republicans in Washington remain almost unanimously opposed to the voting rights expansion, leaving Democrats forced to confront their dwindling options and activists calling for bold reforms to the Senate rules. I mean, that Senate rule is the filibuster. And once again, you know, the midterms are coming up. And I think that is the most important thing that we have to look at when we talk about voting rights and we talk about black voters as a bloc. The filibuster is what's holding things up, and it looks like President Biden is only focused on Build Back America and selling this infrastructure bill. Not saying that they're not important, but to black people, especially if you live in Texas, if you live in Georgia, with the voter suppressions happening, that's what's important to us. And so these are things that we need to really pay attention to when we look at these lawmakers. We need to pay attention to who is holding up these bills. We're talking about Sinema and Manchin. And we have to start targeting some of these Republicans in these seats where we feel like we may have a chance to flip certain states when we look at the midterms. And finally, this week, black activists, civil rights leaders are back on Capitol Hill. While we're sitting at home watching this, they're on Capitol Hill. They're planning another call to action to fight for voting rights. So whatever we can do, Black America, whether it's call your legislation, if you're not happy, we need to really support these civil rights leaders that are constantly in Washington, D.C. fighting for our voting rights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like the Titanic in a way. Like you have a ship and you want everybody to be together, but one part is just being drugged down into the water, and you just can't help it. So, you know, Neil, you always talk a lot about the Republicans having their talking points together, and they're strong. They're always feel like they're always having a meeting. Democrats is just feels like we had trouble with the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. We have trouble with the Freedom to Vote Act, and we're trying to get all these acts that support the black community, but the Republicans are just they don't care, and they're working on to the next topic, and it's just, you know, we don't expect for the Republicans and the Democrats to always agree on something,
right?
But it's scary as a voter, not for me, but like if you're a Republican, maybe it's scary as a voter to know which side to go for, because nobody is on the same page at all when it comes to voting rights right now in America.
Well, the Republicans are on the same
exactly.
page. They say
absolutely.
That's one thing for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.